Oh, well, hello and welcome. Welcome to another take from your friends at Enbro Running Club, Copenhagen, whose microphone and equipment I am trying to use. Hello, Mark.
You do sound like you're broadcasting from a sports bunker.
Yeah.
Can you give us some ball by ball?
Well, I'm stuck in Copenhagen slightly longer than I was expecting to for various reasons, but I bring you exciting news that Depeche Mode played last night, and on the walk to nursery pick up grandchild one, we walked past the entire many thousands of people who wanted to go and see Depeche Mode in Copenhagen, and they had clearly traveled from Sweden and Norway and Germany and everywhere, and they were all looking very happy. That's the first exciting piece of information, rock and roll news I have. And the other is a Brexit benefit. Mark, I bring you news of a Brexit benefit.
Hang on, so this is a good thing about Brexit, is it?
I'm being completely neutral.
Okay.
I went to the nearest pharmacy with a UK prescription, and I said, "Do you take? I have a UK prescription here. This is all in English, obviously, because everyone speaks very good English here.
Yes.
I have an English prescription. Is it okay?" And she said, "Only from Denmark and the EU." So I said, "Okay, that's fair enough," and walked out. And I thought in many ways that's so much fairer for the Danish pharmacists that they don't have to deal with tourists from the UK. Yeah. So the benefit is to Danish pharmacists.
Yes.
Sadly, I'm going to have to wait till I get back home.
I think the Danish pharmacists were first on Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage's mind when they really pushed this through. I think Jacob Rees-Mogg was really thinking about them as well, because as we know, he spends a lot of time worrying about those Danish pharmacists.
Yes, that's right. Anyway, I love them all, and I can see you I can see you in our studio, which is a very strange thing, and I just have a Scandi white wall behind me. So hopefully, if you're watching this on YouTube, that explains everything.
It's very weird. I'm sitting here in the studio looking across an empty desk, and then up on the wall, like Big Brother in that film of 1984, is your face. And then there's a tiny little thumbnail of my face. So it looks like Frank Sidebottom and Little Frank, to be honest.
I think I saw Mads Mikkelsen in the queue for Depeche Mode, by the way.
What, genuinely, or that's a joke?
Well, he looked vague. I mean, to be honest, a lot of middle-aged Danes look like Mads Mikkelsen, or they're trying to look like him. But I almost went up and did an interview for him because it would have helped the show.
Well, this also leads nicely into the fact that there is an interview this week, which is with the director of the new film that he is in, which is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. The interview was to have been done by you, but obviously you're stuck in wonderful Copenhagen, salty old Queen of the Sea, and so instead it was done by me. So I'd like to apologise for that in advance, because that's not really my forte.
It'll have many insights, and of course this is Indiana Toby Jones.
I did tell James Mangold that the film did have a proper star in it, and that was Toby Jones.
And did he react well to that?
Yeah, he loves Toby Jones, but then I've never yet met anybody who doesn't love Toby Jones. I also got a message this morning from Hello to Jason Isaacs saying that he's now filming. But the place that he's filming is half an hour away from where I would be. And he said he can't possibly sit in a car that long to come and visit me.
No, I mean, I think when you get to be a superstar of Jason's levels, that's entirely...
Yeah. He could have been helicoptered.
By the way, on the Mads Mikkelsen thing, who plays like the Nazi baddie in
Jürgen
Indiana Jones, it is the general synopsis, a general kind of understanding, the general consensus here, by which I mean I've spoken to my son about it, that the Scandi actors get a lot of Nazi roles because, for understandable reasons, German actors are going, I don't want to, please, really, do I have to do that? So if you're a super Scandi actor, then you get all the Nazi roles.
So yeah, if you're non-specifically European, you can generally be brought in to play baddies. And so yes, I mean, I was just trying to think. Max von Sydow. Max von Sydow if they just wanted somebody who had an accent that wasn't quite, it was just a little bit. Just get him in, get Max in. He'd be great.
I think Scandi is close enough. I mean, I think that's pretty much. Anyway, I don't know how much longer all these lines will work. So why don't you tell us what you're going to be doing in this particular take?
I'm going to be reviewing Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, La Syndicaliste, which stars Isabelle Huppert, and I'll be reviewing Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And then this is usually when I would throw to, well, I will do anyway, including our special guest.
Who's the bloke you spoke to?
James
who's the
Mangold.
director of the aforementioned.
This is really odd. Yes.
And then extra takes, assuming that we get to extra takes, a whole bunch of other stuff, more nonsense, weekend watch list, weekend not list. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube and I'm not quite looking at you, it's because I have a second screen which is slightly off to, and it's owned by the Danish government. So if it goes wrong, it's a Brexit bonus. Anyway, the weekend watch list, weekend not list, 5 which are great and 3 you'll hate. Plus bonus reviews from Mark, because he's going to be reviewing
My Extinction and also the new Wham documentary. Are you a Wham fan?
I like them. I think they made some very good pop records.
Yes.
That doesn't quite count. Anyway, Pretentious Moi, by the way, is currently Mark Kermode 16, Mark Kermode 15.
Yeah, I snuck into the lead last week. Ahead of myself.
One Frame Back is films with scene-stealing sidekicks, which I'm looking forward to. And you can support us via Apple Podcasts, by the way, or head to extratakes.com.
Are we doing scene-stealing sidekicks because
devices.
Toby Jones steals Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny? Is that why we're doing that?
You're closer to the center of power.
That's why we're doing it. Yes, it's because Toby Jones. It's an Indiana Jones,
okay.
Yeah, Toby Jones. Because Toby Jones steals everything.
Anyway, that's all to come in this particular take and in the other take, which has already landed. If you're already a Vanguardista, obviously, as always, completely out of sync here, we salute you.
When you say the other take has already landed, that's assuming that this line holds up for long enough. So,
yes,
don't get your chickens.
That's true. Plus, I haven't been able to print off anything, so I'm scrolling down on this Danish government laptop, which is moving as fast as BBC.
Can I just ask, why are you on a Danish government laptop? Do you?
It's a lot. It's a very long answer.
Does Child One is a young person of the world? Does he not just have millions of laptops just lying around?
Anyway, here's an email which says,
okay.
Dear Short and Round, who's this? It's from Slim Jim. Okay.
Slim Jim Phantom.
I don't think so. I am writing in regard to a previous piece of correspondence in which the Terminator was shown to an 8-year-old.
Yes.
Remember this?
I do.
I would like to chime in with an anecdote regarding a phenomenon that I have just invented named Indirect Cinepressionable Consequence Disorder, ICPCD. Which actually is a word in Danish, I think. It means no sandwiches and no feeding of the birds under any circumstances. When I was in primary school, my younger brother, who has Down syndrome, and I were babysat by a family friend's teenage boy. Already problems at that point. Right. Why would you ever get a family friend's teenage boy to babysit your children? Anyway, to entertain himself and indeed us, he rifled through the videos that we had on the shelf and he came across our box set of the original 3 Indiana Jones films. For some unimaginable reason, he chose The Temple of Doom. All was fine and dandy for the first however long, until he got to the scene in which some poor devil is tortured, subjected to an amateur cardiac excision, and burned to live-ish at the hands of a bald man with a funny hat on. The cinepressionable consequence of this was a difficult night's sleep for me. For my brother, however, it had, sorry, to scroll too far. For my brother, however, it had more galvanizing and somewhat more troubling effects. A day or so later, my parents, still unaware that we'd watched the movie, received a call from my brother's school saying that Ted had spent his playtime trying to rip the hearts out of his friends' chests. He would then hold the imaginary organ above his head and yell, "I've got his heart," before pretending to eat it and saying, yummy. I would like, therefore, to suggest that it was not me or my brother who suffered from ICPCD, but my brother's friends who were confronted with the sharp end of the reenactment. You'll be glad to hear that all of the parties involved survived, and indeed one of the victims recently got married, to which Ted was invited. There seemed to be no lasting effects, although, having seen the pictures, the pudding at the reception was served in something that looked a lot like the skull of a rhesus macaque. I'm sure it was just a coincidence, though. Anyway, thank you for the wonderful work, and remember, always keep your monkey brains refrigerated.
Yes.
Best served chilled, says Slim Jim.
Yeah. The chilled monkey brains thing Temple of Doom is a weirdly misjudged film. Even if you were old enough to have seen it, it's still, Spielberg himself has said this, that looking back at it, they got it wrong. They just, there are things in that film that are really, really properly nasty. Including the chilled monkey brains, which is the thing that almost everybody remembers. Very, very odd. Then again, the first film ends with scary angels melting the faces off Nazis. But it's okay because they're Nazis.
Got an email here from Toby Jones, brackets.
Not that one. Okay.
So, dear Let It Be and Leave It Be, like The Good Doctors, I was pleasantly surprised to see the mighty Sanjeev Bhaskar of this parish rock up in the new DC offering of The Flash at the weekend. My reaction made me think that whilst Jason has his own greeting, see fine branded drinking vessels for details, see the podcast and live show regular and sometimes substitute, Sanjeev Bhaskar is missing out. Any Sanjeev-related appearance is guaranteed to brighten anyone's day. So with that in mind, for myself at least, from now on, whenever I see him or hear him anywhere, I will say to myself what I said, rather too audible a volume, I think, in the cinema during the screening of The Flash. Hurrah, it's Sanjeev. As for the film itself, I rather enjoyed the first half. Beyond that, the eye-bashing CGI and increasing annoyance of Ezra Miller's sub-Bill and Ted dude shtick were not sufficiently offset by the Easter eggs and fan references to alleviate the unnecessary length of the film. Michael Keaton was great, though. Hello to Jason, up with one thing, down with the other, and hurrah, it's Sanjeev, says Toby Jones from Showbiz North London. So I think that's not a bad idea. So whenever you hear Sanjeev on something or see him in something, or if you see him in the shops or on the tube, you shout lustily, hurrah, it's Sanjeev. What do you think?
I think it's good. I'm going to discourage it being shouted out loud in cinemas. I think that the emailer was correct to do it the internal monologue, hurrah, it's Sanjeev. The thing I'm wondering is, Jason wandering around in the world, people come up to him and go, hello to Jason Isaacs. I'm just wondering what the effect on Sanjeev's life will be if he wanders around in the world to a constant chorus of hurrah, it's Sanjeev. Should we try?
It can only be affirming, can't it?
Yeah, yes, affirming, bordering on the. Well, I tell you what, let's give it a go. Okay, so yes. for a trial period, and we haven't run this past Sanjeev, but we don't have the technology to do that. It's amazing that I'm actually talking to Copenhagen. So for a trial period of 2 weeks, if anyone sees Sanjeev in anything or in the flesh, try hurrah, it's Sanjeev. And if Sanj then texts us and says, would you mind withdrawing this because it's driving me nuts, then we will do so. Yes.
Okay, so we'll do this for a limited offer period only.
I told you that Jason Isaacs said to me that when he met Alan Parker, the very famous film director, he was introduced to him and he said, Sir Alan Parker, this is Jason Isaacs. And Sir Alan Parker said, what, as in hello to Jason Isaacs?
There you go. Famous for something, anyway. Yeah. Correspondence at Coburn&Mayo.com if you want to take part. Correspondence at Coburn&Mayo.com. By the way, the microphone that I'm using here, the one that belongs to Embro Running Club Copenhagen, is called a Thron Max, which for all the world is a character in Lord of the Rings, at least. But it's a Thron Max microphone.
It's not a Charlize Thron Max.
No, but that would work. Anyway, correspondence at Coburn&Mayo.com. Give us a review of something mighty.
Okay. La Syndicaliste, which is a French film, the title of which means The Trade Unionist. This is directed by Jean-Paul Salomé, re-teaming with Isabelle Huppert, with whom he made a film called La Daronne, which over here was released as Mama Weed, which is not a great title. Anyway, this is based on the true story of Maureen Kearney, of whom I had not heard before, trade union activist in France. Had you heard of Maureen Kearney?
No, I'm afraid.
Okay. No. So an Irish woman living in France, although actually I only found the Irish roots thing later on, because obviously Isabelle Huppert's performance is in French, and I have no idea whether or not Isabelle Huppert is doing an accent, or indeed what that accent would be. So the film opens in the aftermath of a horrible attack. She is found, 2012, found in her house by her cleaner, bound, gagged, violated, I think is the only word to use. The story then goes back to the period before, leading up to the attack. She's the head union representative for a French multinational nuclear company. And when her boss is replaced, she discovers these secret plans to do a deal with Chinese, which will have huge implications for all the workers that she represents. And she tries to blow the whistle on the deal. And when she does so, she starts receiving threats, threatening phone calls. Her family start to think that they're being followed. And then the attack that we started with. In the aftermath of the attack, she is calm and composed. I mean, actually, I was reminded of the of Elle, which again is Isabelle Huppert, in which she plays a character who is refusing to be to act like a victim, and the police start to think that her reactions aren't normal, aren't what you would expect. They also can't find evidence of the attack, and all too quickly, she goes from being somebody who has been attacked to somebody who is being investigated for having given false witnesses, a very specific offence in France. The film's inspired by an essay of the same name by Caroline Michel Aguirre, and the director cites films like Klute and All the President's Men, which are like, political thrillers, American political thrillers, as influences. And I didn't know this story before. And the story is really very, very alarming. Isabelle Huppert is terrific in the lead role, as she always is. I mean, I've never seen Isabelle Huppert give anything other than a note-perfect performance. And I was reading this thing that the director wrote about it, saying it's a drama that frightens through its clinical approach to themes, such as the place of women in spheres of power, the importance granted to their speech, and the assumption of their madness and their manipulative behavior, which is kind of the thing that's at the heart of the film. I mean, on the one hand, it's a story about a whistleblower, and you can see links to things like, you can see, like I said, you can see links to those political thrillers that he cited. But it is also about what happens when you have a powerful woman in a largely male-dominated workplace who starts to speak out of turn, and the way in which the world around them reacts. And an awful lot of it is to do with the fact that as far as everyone around her is concerned, she is not behaving in the way she should do if the story that she's telling is true. Now, in case people don't know the story, and I didn't, so I didn't know where it was going, and obviously you can look it up. It's a real-life story. It is a fairly alarming real-life story about her then subsequent legal battle. But the drama is very gripping. It's well directed. I really did not know which way the story was going at all. And personally, I found that actually worked for the drama. Although, of course, this is a real life story with real life consequences, with a real life outcome. And so you may wish to find out about the real life outcome in advance. And Isabelle Huppert just continues to be. She just never puts a foot wrong. She is a really, really fine actor, and she kind of carries the film. And it's called La Syndicaliste.
La Syndicaliste.
Yep.
Okay.
Literally the trade unionist.
That's about La Syndicaliste sounds more powerful, do you know?
Yeah, no, it's which is why I think they've kept that title, because I think it is a really good title, as opposed to Mama Weed, which is not such a great title.
No, indeed not. Okay, still to come.
Oh, still to come, reviews of Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny with our special guest. Over to you.
Well, you spoke to him.
I know, but this is how we do it in the thing, and I can't see you because the internet connection has now gone down. All I can see now is a list of numbers. So over to you.
Is it the director of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny?
The director of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Excellent.
James Mangold.
James Mangold. Okay, we're going to be back before you can say the life of man is of no greater importance to the universe than that of an oyster. David Hume, who could outconsume Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. Okay, so let's do the box office top 10 at 21, The Super 8 Years.
Which I thought was okay. I didn't think it was quite as good as people who love it do. It is essentially a construction of narrative through Super 8 film with voiceover, and I thought the voiceover was doing an awful lot of heavy lifting. But I do know people who have enjoyed it. Not so much me.
Number 10 is The Boogeyman, which has been hanging around quite well, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's done well. I still think that it's a very solid mainstream movie. I prefer it when this director who you spoke to, you can still hear the thing on a previous pod, is allowed to do something slightly more off the wall. But it's done good, solid mainstream business.
Fast 10 is at 9.
So this must be now in its kind of final week, probably in the top 10. But it has done astronomically well. One of the most expensive movies ever made. I was just looking at the adjusted for inflation list recently, and it's it's up there in the top end of movies. We still have more to come. That's the thing, is that the story hasn't finished yet.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is at number 8.
Surprising how well it's done considering how dark it is.
Greatest Days at 7.
Which you have now officially reassessed.
Yes, on the basis that it all kind of clicked into place in the final lap.
And I should flag up that on Take 2 we'll be reviewing, because obviously the Greatest Days is... it's not Take That, but it is Take That, but it's not Take That, but it is Take That. And in Take 2 we'll be reviewing the Wham documentary, the Netflix Wham documentary.
Number 6 is Transformers Rise of the Beast.
It's not as good as Bumblebee, but it is better than the other ones that Michael Bay directed.
The Little Mermaid is at 5.
Worth it just for how much it's annoyed the idiots. So yeah, good.
And number 4 is Asteroid City. So now here's an email from, just trying to scroll down with my Danish government computer. Evie Harker Shaw has sent in an email. I'm just going to flannel. There we go. Okay, thoughts on Asteroid City. I've no intention of trying to change anyone's mind about this film. If anything, I'm sure that if you were to watch it again, you would take against it all the more, find it more patience-testing, more arch, more full of itself. Rather, I'd like to say that you and I, and this here is a reference to you, Mark, saw different films. The film I saw was charming, funny, poignant, and beautiful. I know that Asteroid City looks like all Anderson's films, and so it is difficult to argue that the aesthetic adds much substance. How can a style that's persistent and unwavering also be particular or illuminating? How can a compulsive style be heartfelt? I don't know exactly. The same style that was relentless and tripping in Grand Budapest was here more still, more engaged, more encouraging. With a few exceptions, the cops and robber chases being the most regrettable, the look of the film was attentive, considerate, and curious, which did much to balance out its main character's emotional constipation. I found the style tailored and not just elegant, but resonant. I didn't mind the actors' studio sections as you did, but if they comprise your predominant memory of the film, I can understand your displeasure. My main memory is of 2 windows facing each other from 2 cabins. I remember the 2 people talking between those windows. I liked listening to those people. I remember a Chanel bottle. I remember Scarlett being excellent. Elsewhere, I also remember having new fluttering feelings for Adrian Brody. I remember Maya Hawke's foot tapped back when Rupert Friend appeared stage right. I remember 3 daughters, a vampire, a witch, and a fairy. Many of these things feel incidental, some of them certainly incidental. But this is a film where incidental is important, and I found it delightful, says Evie Harker Shaw.
And, you're not alone. There's an awful lot of people who like Asteroid City very much. And as I think I said at the time, if you are a Wes Anderson fan, it's the most Wes Anderson film that he's ever made. And, and it's entirely possible that you'll love it. There's a kind of strange thing around this, which is that, in a way, the movie is kind of quite Marmite. I know many people who love it, and I know many people who really don't like it very much. And I'm in the latter camp. Well, I think it's well crafted and it's very Andersonian. The thing I don't quite get is this is absolutely not in that email, because that email was tonally very beautiful and measured and very well argued. There is a certain chippiness among Wes Anderson fans to people who haven't liked Asteroid City, because the film has proved kind of somewhat divisive. I mean, I think when it was French Dispatch, it was a slightly different matter. But yeah, I mean, it's, the film reminded me of Mars Attacks, which I liked a lot more. And my favorite bit in Mars Attacks is when Jack Nicholson, as whatever it is, president of, wherever, America or the world, I can't remember, says, little people, can't we all just get along? And I kind of feel it's an odd film to be irate about. I suppose that's the thing. But yeah, many Wes Anderson fans love it, and that's a good thing. If you're a Wes Anderson fan, you know what you're going to get. I have loved some Wes Anderson movies. I have not loved some other ones. But hey, little people, can't we all just get along?
Number 3 is No Hard Feelings. So an email here from David Thompson. While I completely understand how some may see the premise and casting of the film as weird and disgusting, I feel the film is very open about what's going on in the trailer and the many posters I've seen around. I've grown up laughing my way through gross-out films such as American Pie, Road Trip, The Interview, and Long Shot, can appreciate them for what they are. I agree and are absolutely happy, and obviously happy that times have changed in society in terms of what's appropriate and not appropriate in the workplace and in general conversation. However, on a movie screen, when watching a film where you've had the opportunity to see the trailer and research what you're getting yourself into, I must protest. Excuse me. Are these films masterpieces? Absolutely not. Are they funny to a certain audience? Yes. And what's more, not a multiverse in sight. I actually found the movie to be much sweeter than I originally expected it to be and would recommend it to a wider audience than I originally thought. On the troublesome scale, it's nowhere near Nymphomaniac or even Rushmore in terms of what the leads are portraying. And I'd love to hear why Mark found this troubling and last year's Licorice Pizza, a film which is tonally different but has a much more troubling age gap, to be totally fine. Anyway, tinkety tonk, up with blue hair and down with orange-faced toilet readers. David Thompson.
Well,
on No Hard Feelings.
Yes, I mean, we discussed the Licorice Pizza thing a lot.
We did.
And the general feeling was that there isn't actually a right or wrong answer to that, because some people, I mean, I absolutely love that film, but there are people who object to it for very good and very well expressed reasons, and that is perfectly fine. I think the problem with No Hard Feelings isn't that I find it objectionable. I think the problem is it's tonally all over the place. Now, in terms of the way it's sold, there actually has been a little bit of controversy about whether or not the trailer, I mean, there's more than one trailer, but whether or not the trailer sort of selling it as a gross out comedy was doing it an injustice. And there was a kind of debate about exactly what the trailer should attempt to be selling. I still think that the main problem with it is that the two leads appear to be in different films. One of them appears to be in a film about an independent, free-spirited young woman who knows what she wants, and then the other one appears to be a completely caricatured figure who seems to have walked out of a movie like Revenge of the Nerds. And I think that was, also, as I said, it nods towards Ferris Bueller, and it obviously takes riffs from Risky Business, which are films that are just, that some people like them, some people don't. I don't think the problem with No Hard Feelings is. I mean, I felt awkward all the way through. I felt uncomfortable all the way through it. But the tagline is pretty awkward. I found it was pretty awkward. It has gone in at number 3, which is for an original comedy, is a solid showing. So it's done fine and great. If you saw it and you enjoyed it, that's really good. It just didn't work for me.
The Flash is at number 2.
I mean, The Flash, I imagine that an awful lot of people who see The Flash feel the same way as I think both you and I did, which is there are things in it that are fun. There are things, I mean, I actually like Michael Keaton's performance as the washed up Batman. I think that works well. It does turn into smashy bashy crashy. There are some unforgivably shonky visual effects in it. And, again, we're in the same position that's at number 2, and at number 1 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And if you look at what those, sorry to steal your thunder on that, but if you look at those two movies back to back, one of them is a multiverse movie that makes the multiverse exciting and interesting, and another is a multiverse movie that I think makes it exhausting and exasperating.
And thank you for the correspondence about Shonky VFX, which we will get to. We haven't got time to get to it at the moment, but we will get to it at some stage. Thank you very much for the emails to correspondence@copenhagen.com. Back in a moment, Mark has spoken to James Mangold's Indiana Jones conversation after this. So now, welcome back. As I'm stranded in Denmark this week, as I've mentioned, Mark stepped into the hot seat to interview this week's guest, the director of Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny, the 5th installment in the franchise. He is James Mangold. You'll also know him as the director of Heavy, The Wolverine and Logan, among others. Mark's interview with James after this clip.
Water displacement. Get in the pool!
What? Help me open the door!
Well, they didn't get out the doors. Get in the pool!
Okay. I'm getting in the pool.
Help me! Archimedes was fascinated by water displacement!
That was a clip from Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I'm thrilled to be joined by its director, James Mangold. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark.
So the film plays out in two worlds, the end of World War II and 1960s. Invite us into the
It
world.
actually plays in three worlds, but
we can't say
we
that.
can't say that. But
Yeah.
I just did.
Well
but
done.
But well done.
And all the time, it's the critics who get told, don't give spoilers away.
Yeah, but I didn't give away a spoiler. I
Okay.
just merely talked theoretically about the time realms that the movie
That
takes
it
place
might
in,
play out in
That
three
it
worlds.
might play out.
Okay, so introduce us to the world of the film.
I guess this is how I do it. I'd say that when I came onto this project, it seemed to me it still was without a script that had become solid.
Yeah.
So the first task at hand was to try and figure out what is this movie about and what do we have to say. And it seemed to me, knowing my leading man was in his late 70s, that it was kind of a hero who finds himself at sunset, but also a hero who has always been focused on time himself. He is himself a man who is always looking backward into historical past, but may have his own life and history may be catching up with him in some way. And so that became, that told me that I wanted to start the movie in a way in 1944, what I'd call the golden Indiana Jones period, so we could give the audience a taste, even more than a taste, of a fresh sequence in the tradition of Indiana Jones movies, these opening sequences that almost feel like the end of a previous movie.
Yeah.
Give the audience that, but also use it as a kind of cinematic opportunity for my favorite cut in the film, which is as you round out the adventure in 1944 with a young Indiana Jones, you cut quite quietly to 1969 in New York City and come upon Indiana Jones in his 70s. And that change and that contrast, a man in his prime in a kind of golden age period, chasing Nazis in the great war of wars, where all things were simple, good guys, bad guys, our sense of right and wrong, with golden age music playing, wearing a fedora, all the aesthetics we know of from Indiana Jones, to finding ourselves in a more modernist time with a man who may feel out of time.
You and I first met in a previous century when you'd made Heavy, and you're approaching 60, and I'm very fast approaching 60. How much of this is to do with you?
Myself?
Yeah.
I think I've been a kind of focused on being old since I mean, in a way, Heavy is almost a similar film in the sense of a kind of character who very much is at least pushing 50 at that point and kind of finding he hasn't lived his life yet. And the next movie about a kind of sheriff in middle-age Copland, kind of at this point where he spent his whole life doing kind of the wrong thing and is faced with this last moment. I'm very fascinated by time and age and the choices left behind us, that the roads not taken and how those regrets haunt us. I guess I'm also fascinated by how much movies in general try and avoid these questions, at least American movies, and their focus on youth, and our heroes generally are absent of flaws or vulnerabilities. So even, in my case, when I made Logan, it also became a different, certainly more grim meditation on the last chapter of a hero's life. But it also was a kind of meditation on the past catching up with you. And it's something fascinating to me, and something film is uniquely equipped to explore because of its unique relationship with time. Films are more than just images and acting. They are time itself on a spool unwinding.
And how was the act of turning back time by de-aging Harrison Ford for those early scenes? Because I have no idea what that must feel like on set to do.
On set, it's just Harrison acting younger and spry, and when it's something he can't possibly do in a young fashion, having someone else do it. But the whole concept is to just, I just shot it piece by piece like any other movie. It's just that his head and the way he was driving his performance came out of whatever Harrison was doing and was projected through this technology into his younger self.
The film obviously stars Harrison Ford. However, you have one of the greatest movie stars of our time in it, Toby Jones. Now, I am the world's biggest Toby Jones fan. In fact, I had the privilege of going to college with Toby Jones, so I still can't believe it every time I see him on a massive screen. Tell me about Toby Jones and working with him, and say only good things.
No, I love that you said that. I love him. And I think his spirit, you love him the moment you meet him on screen. From the moment he turns into a close-up, you adore the heart of this character. I've seen him do a million things always well. I thought we were so blessed when we got him on board. And he's such a joy to work with. I can't think of anything negative to say about Toby Jones. If you could give me a prize for doing so, I just adore him.
He's one of the people in America, you call them character actors. Here we just call them actors. Every time you see him in a different role, he looks like a completely different person. I think
he's a miracle. But, that's my kind of actor. I mean, it's even why I love Harrison so much is he may be a leading man, but he is, in the American terminology, a character actor. He's always looking to undermine his leading manness. One of the really interesting experiences working with Harrison that was it was clear to me as we were working on the script and in prep, but really became crystal clear once I was on set with him every day, directing him, is that he arrives every day. We get these things we call our sides, which are this kind of mini version of the day's work to hold in our pocket and in script form. And Harrison will be fumbling through the sides of the day. And I can see what he's doing, that the gears are spinning in his mind. How can I undermine this scene? I don't mean undermine it like in a bad way. I mean undermine its obviousness or make the scene more messy or complex or human. This is not what all leading men do.
Yeah.
He's always looking, and Indiana Jones is the perfect example of it. He's a hero, but he's always a hero who sometimes falls into the right move. His punches often don't land. He often turns the wrong corner and has to correct himself. Harrison loves his character making mistakes. He loves his character's foibles. He loves to get lucky, that Indiana Jones kind of just gets lucky and survives. And he also loves his anxieties. Indiana Jones is kind of a socially awkward character who's never really managed to have a strong relationship last very long. He avoids students, avoids attachments, loves just books and being on his own. All these are not the typical attributes of a quote unquote hero, but Harrison manages to weave them all together and has throughout his career, not just in this role, but many, as this tapestry of humanity, human foibles that make us even more endeared to his hero than other actors might be who are playing some kind of perfect specimen.
So what does it bring to the table when you put that alongside Phoebe Waller-Bridge? What energy does that bring to it?
Harrison and Phoebe are very similar characters and talents. She's formidable creatively, and I think one of the astounding talents of the last decade to emerge. And I mean, when this opportunity regarding this film first came to my door, and I began puzzling over what I would do with the story, and we talked about this idea of Indy having a goddaughter who comes out of his past and kind of comes to find him. It was instantly Phoebe to me. I was admittedly just watching the second season of Fleabag at the time that this movie landed with me. Phoebe is such a modern creative force, but she's also classically old school to me. She reminds me of Kate Hepburn or Barbara Stanwyck, or kind of verbal, whip smart, capable, independent, maybe a little dangerous, maybe even will destroy you, but you'll fall in love with her nonetheless. A really remarkably complex series of braided elements that are both a part of her and a part of what she brings to the screen. And I felt like she'd be a handful for Harrison, which is always, with an actor like him, that's what you want, is you basically want to just put the very best tennis opponent you can to hit the ball and put some spin on it.
And no Mutt in the story, which some might be surprised at.
Well, Mutt is in the story.
What?
But I understand.
Yes.
I'm not sure anyone would be surprised, honestly.
Okay. Okay. Let's think. Well, okay, fine. So in terms of the balance between the roller coaster ride, which we expect from Indiana Jones, and the characterization which you're talking about, and like as I said, when we first talked, it was, little independent films. Is it hard to balance that? Is it ever a battle, or is it just these two things can run along on separate tracks?
Well, I definitely say that I wouldn't want my first movie to be a movie at this scale. That having made, while I've never made a movie as large as this, making movies that are large in scope and nature and budget and travel, et cetera, visual effects, you do begin to learn how to manage what is effectively a gigantic operation.
Just logistically.
Yes, but you realize there's one part that you really that doesn't change. There's one part that doesn't change from Heavy to Indiana Jones and everything in between. You arrive in a room, not unlike this one, with a few actors and a camera, and you got to move them around and make the scene work and break it into units that we can understand and make each shot, at least by my standards, have value and know why this shot, why that shot. I try not to just smear the scene with angles. But that Heavy, Girl Interrupted, Walk the Line, Le Mans 66, Indiana Jones, I still arrive each day having to make something happen in a space with actors. And all the scale of what's outside the walls of that set, how many trucks, how many cranes, how many stuntmen, or the scale of the sets, it all kind of vanishes under that simple, basic job I have of trying to make with the actors something lifelike and enjoyable and entertaining and moving happen.
Our time's nearly up. Let me ask you one last thing. The Butterworths, who are, formidable writers, how do you write with them? Do you write in a room or do you write separately? How does it work?
Separately, but together. I'd say that that was unique in this movie because it was born in the pandemic. And so Jez and John Henry live here in London, and I'm on the West Coast of America. So almost all our time was spent as most of the world in extended Zoom calls.
But you'd worked with them before in which you were physically
on Ford
together.
Ferrari, Le Mans 66. And we have a great relationship and a sense of each other's taste and instincts. And it was a joy working with them on this, in a kind of laboratory of just, because when we started, we kind of had an idea that the movie was going to be about time and this hero at sunset and other elements, but we felt our way through the story and let the story speak to us and kind of tell us where it was going. And they're real artists, and they're fearless. And what I mean, and I say that's true about Harrison and Phoebe as well. I love people who both understand the responsibility and magnitude of what they're doing, but they also understand that in some ways, to ever succeed at making these things, you have to kind of put all of that out of your mind. You can't win a football game if you're thinking about how important the game is. You have to win the game by thinking about the ball. And that in the end, Jez and John Henry were thinking about the ball. We're thinking about how to write, how to construct scenes we hadn't seen before or characters we hadn't seen before in situations that seemed inviting and intoxicating and fun, because that's the other aspect I think we really enjoyed in the writing process, is that action adventure movies, and I don't say this with any disdain because I participate in it, many action adventure movies are kind of brutalist affair. They're very assaultive, and there's a kind of grimness of message to the modern action adventure or even superhero movie. Indiana Jones, I think part of what we miss about the films and part of what Jez and John Henry and I tried to capture in crafting the narrative was that these are charming films and kind of as much about eccentric character as they are about the scale of the visuals, and that the hero doesn't always know what to do or have the right tool in his belt or can't always jump from here to there successfully, that it's not about kind of the physical perfection of the character. It's about the humor and the humanity in the interplay of all this eccentricity of character with all this scale. And that's not what we created. That was the formula that Larry Kasdan and Steven and George created, and Harrison from the beginning, of this wonderful friction between a character piece that was played out on such a grand scale at the same time.
James, thank you for your time.
My
and
pleasure,
in advance, happy 60th birthday.
To you as well, Mark.
Thank you.
And that is James Mangold talking to Mark, because I was not available, hopefully briefly. Who knows when I'm going to make it back. Anyway, we watched, I kind of know a lot about what you think about Indiana Jones because I was watching it with you. Anyway, but having had the conversation, tell us what you thought of the movie.
Well, I think that both you and I are on the same page about this. So we sat and we watched Dial of Destiny together, and we saw it on an IMAX screen. So, you know, great big romping experience. And I think if you're going to go and see it, that's the way to see it, because it is, in many ways, for all its, up to the minute de-aging, which I know there's been some debate about this. I actually thought the de-aging stuff was done rather. Did you think the de-aging stuff with Harrison Ford? I was kind of convinced by it. Were you not?
No,
Okay.
It's better than it used to be, but he looked like a figure in a computer game. And the worst bit is where young Indy is running across the roof of the top of a train, and it just looks like it's been. It looks like a piece of animation. So I was kind of out of sorts, I think.
Okay. I wasn't, because I actually thought that stuff, it demonstrates that two people sitting right next to each other in a cinema can see, essentially different things. We also saw this back to back with another film, which is an action adventure film, which was a real edge of the seat experience. And I think the thing with Indiana Jones is that it's got a kind of nostalgic affection that isn't to do with absolutely nail-biting, action. I mean, yes, there are, great big romping things. There are car chases, there's bikes, there's the stuff with the train at the beginning, there's the two separate time periods working. But at the heart of it is a character that you have been with for a long time, to whom there is a huge amount of affection. And I think the headline thing is to say that Harrison Ford sort of earns that. I mean, Harrison Ford has reprised, Han Solo and Rick Deckard in later life incarnations, and he's done it really well. And in the case of this, the film wouldn't work if you didn't have somebody as innately likable on screen as the central character that he has created. I think the very fact that he's managed to create those three really important genre heroes is a great testament to him. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on at the beginning, as James Mangold was saying in the interview between Indy in his prime and Indy now. I mean, now the thing that he resembles most closely is the old guy from Up. When you first meet him, he's literally like that grouchy character banging on the neighbor's door and saying, "Can you stop making all this noise?" Toby Jones steals every single scene that he is in, and he's having a whale of a time doing it. And there are very few people who can invest, what's a role which it would always be in danger of going towards the pantomime, but just get the tone of it completely right. And I think that every minute that Toby Jones is on screen, you think, this is great. It's so brilliant to see him. And obviously the fact that we saw it on the IMAX screen, I don't think I've ever seen Toby that big. That was terrific. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who is bringing
who's his daughter, which is stretching things, I think.
His goddaughter.
Oh, goddaughter.
Toby Jones. So Toby Jones's daughter.
Yes,
she's Toby Jones's character's daughter, but
right.
she's Indy's goddaughter. But the way that's set up is essentially because she's his goddaughter, there is a kind of familial relationship, which means that as they go off on this quest around the world, they can do that family infighting, even though she's technically not family, but she's a goddaughter. Yeah. And there's a whole thing about, because you've been so great as a role model, as my godfather, and where have you been? Meanwhile, behind all of this, like the shark from Jaws, is correct my pronunciation, Mads Mikkelsen. Tell me how to say it again. Mads Mikkelsen as I'm not a Nazi, I am a Nazi, I'm not a Nazi, but I really am. Not chewing the scenery, but sucking the scenery. He does this thing with his lips, which is kind of, it is a really, I don't know how, I don't know what it is, but he does something with his lips that looks like he's kind of siphoning bad air into his system, this kind of poisonous presence who has this menace. And it is a kind of shark-like menace. It's sort of quiet and it's floating around in the background. And then you have the set pieces, and the set pieces are set pieces. They're not, edge of the seat, heart thumping. That's not what they're about. They are kind of old-fashioned. The thing that I ended up thinking was, all this really begins with George Lucas thinking about the serials of the 30s and 40s, the kind of cheapy B movies. And of course, when Indiana Jones when the first Raiders of the Lost Ark came out, it was a comparatively cheap movie for Steven Spielberg. I mean, compared to Close Encounters in 1941, it was a comparatively low budget movie. It was a way of him getting back to his roots. Now, these movies are, massively huge productions. And yet, oddly enough, no matter how much they end up costing, in the end, they stand or fall on whether or not you see Indy, and a part of you goes, oh. And, I've said, I have gone back and watched the other Raiders of Indiana Jones movies, and I honestly, I forgive me, I don't think they're as great as everyone remembers, but I think that there is still that affection for them because at the time, we enjoy, even at the time, they were nostalgic movies. That's nostalgia has been written right into the heart of them. So that was always there. The last act
of... Oh, yes, that's what I wanted to mention.
Okay. Well, so without spoiling, what would you say about
Well, my heart sank, to be honest, because I agree with everything that you said. Harrison Ford plays a fantastic character. I've loved the films. You watch them over many, many decades. He's entitled to a final film, but that final act is so depressingly preposterous that I couldn't wait to. I thought it was such. No, come on, really? Oh, right, Jesus is here. Oh, it's not Jesus, but it's someone who's like Jesus. That was. I just thought, oh no, please. Anyway, others may well like it.
Well, yes, I mean. It is in the end with the last act. You're either going to go, oh for heavens, it was So it is what it is. I mean, I think it's a kind of popcorn nostalgia romp, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge is fun. I think that Harrison Ford carries the movie. Toby Jones is terrific. They lucked out with getting such a good villain. The plot is all over the place. I mean, all over the place, but it does the thing that you expect. There's the chase on the train. There's the chase in the small car. There's the bit with the thing, and then there's the bit with the thing, and then there's the last
there's the guy who isn't Jesus.
There's the guy who isn't Jesus, but for all intents and purposes, might as well be.
He's like Harrison Ford's Jesus, basically. That's his own personal Jesus by Depeche Mode, who we're here in Copenhagen.
He's what Eddie Izzard refers to as Jeezy Cleezy.
Now, we should just to be completely honest, the reason why this take is a little bit shorter than normal, for which apologies, is entirely my fault because I genuinely have a plane to catch. So we'll put a bunch of stuff into take two. We'll make up for it, promise, in future weeks. But for the moment, thank you very much, and we'll see you in take two.
Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. While you're here, check out all the other videos because they're cool too, aren't they?
Yeah, and if you want to keep up to date with everything Kermode and Mayo's Take, then check out our social channels.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
I mean, I would. I have done.
Excellent.